Hey kids, let's talk about human ego and corporate greed. That's right, it's time to discuss the Terminator franchise. See, for decades now, sci-fi fanatics have pulled out all the red string to fill up their conspiracy boards detailing exactly what the heck was going on with the series' unfortunate continuity. They blame the grandfather paradox and point out causal loops and branching realities and argue over whether Judgment Day is inevitable or if there is no fate but what we make. But today, we're delving into the cold, hard truth about how the Terminator's continuity has devolved over time, not by quantum mechanics, but rather the fallibility of man. Also cash money, feel me? Let's dig into it. In the original 1984 classic, The Terminator, the logic of the story centered on a closed loop. Kyle Reese travels back in time to save Sarah Connor and becomes the father of John Connor. The remains of the T-800 lead to the creation of Skynet. It was a pretty classic use of sci-fi tropes, and overall a clean solution given you could accept those very basic flaws inherent in the time travel genre. Later, Terminator 2 Judgment Day introduced the idea that the future could be changed, shifting the logic to a dynamic timeline. Many fans are quick to point to these two competing philosophies, determinism versus free will, as the source of the franchise's narrative collapse. However, plenty of franchises like Star Trek or Back to the Future manage shifting timelines without losing that secret sauce that makes them so enjoyable and reasonably easy to follow. The Terminator timeline didn't start splintering because of story necessities. It splintered because the rights to the franchise kept changing hands like a freaking hot potato.
That's what she said.
To understand why the story is so fractured, you have to follow the money. This is a proper case of the root of all evil doing its thing. Basically, James Cameron sold the rights to the original film for $1, yes, $1, to producer Gale Ann Hurd just to get the damn thing made. Remember, this is back when all he had to his name as a director was Piranha 2: The Spawning. Little Jimmy wasn't exactly the toast of the town at the time. For a nobody, the deal was pretty sweet. Just sell off the rights for nothing and get a dream project off the ground. This decision effectively divorced the creator from his creation, leading to a decade-long game of musical chairs. Terminator was produced primarily by a small company called Hemdale Film Corporation and distributed by 80s icon Orion Pictures. And yes, I am about to be like the bad guy in Speed Racer and just detail a bunch of business crap. I'm sorry.
Talk to the hand.
Things immediately went off the rails, with Hemdale stalling a sequel to the hit film due to disagreements with Cameron and star Arnold Schwarzenegger, which of course led to a whole other series of legal issues, a can of worms I will not be opening for this video. Luckily for those lads Jim and Arnie, they managed to get Carol Co. Pictures to purchase the rights in 1990. After T2, Carol Co. famously went bankrupt. The rights were eventually split between studio founders Mario Kassar and Andrew Vajna, I think is how you say his name, Andrew Vajna, who formed C2 Pictures in 1997, under which they would produce the next film in the franchise. Because Cameron wasn't involved in their vision for Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines, the continuity began to fray. The Jonathan Mouse-style directed third entry chose to undo the hopeful ending of T2, claiming now that Judgment Day was inevitable. This wasn't a narrative choice made for thematic depth or to please the fans keeping a close eye on the timeline. It was a choice made to ensure the franchise could continue indefinitely as an action property. Again, money.
Easy money. Come on.
In 2007, amidst production on Terminator: The Sarah Connor Chronicles, Kassar and Vajna, sold the rights to the Halcyon Company for just $25 million. That company would produce the remainder of the Sarah Connor Chronicles, which lasted for one additional season before being canceled after just 2 seasons. On the feature side of things, Halcyon's goal was to produce a gritty new direction for the series, Terminator Salvation. The idea here was to move away from the protector versus assassin trope that had had heretofore dominated the storytelling and instead focus on the more fresh and unexplored arena of, let's see here, post-apocalyptic action. You know, that thing that was definitely not done to death by the Italians in the 1980s. Further, Halcyon and director McGee's idea was to create a new trilogy of films in this future world, as well as depictions of the initial war that led to Skynet's victory. Unfortunately for those suits making the decisions, Halcyon also ran into financial ruin, filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy shortly after Salvation's 2009 release. Now, okay, here's the thing. When a franchise is sold at a bankruptcy auction, the new owners, they aren't really looking to respect the canon of what came before. They're looking for a little ROI, return on investment. This led to a pattern where every new owner attempted to fix the franchise by hitting the reset button. And as you can imagine, that went great. Halcyon's bankruptcy led to California hedge fund Pacificor, which had been the ones to force Halcyon into bankruptcy in the first place, nabbing the rights for roughly $30 million in 2010, with the deal stipulating that $5 million would be paid to Halcyon for every further Terminator entry, and that Halcyon's debt to Pacificor and other creditors would be wiped out. In 2011, Annapurna Pictures nabbed the rights for less than $20 million. That's insane. That is bananas. Wow. Annapurna was owned by Megan Ellison, whose brother David Ellison at the time was head of Skydance Media, which would eventually merge with Paramount in 2025 after over a decade of Paramount co-financing and distributing a hefty chunk of Skydance productions. We don't really know exactly what happened there, but basically Skydance wound up with the franchise. So of this partnership came the Genisys disaster. 2015's Terminator Genisys, spelled not at all as you would expect and instantly leaving a bad taste in fans' mouths before its release, is perhaps the greatest evidence of studio interference just killing logic. Like, to the point this really isn't meant to be some truth bomb, because frankly, the end result of Genisys was apparent from the first lame behind-the-scenes photos that surfaced. Skydance Media and Paramount Pictures, the new owners of the franchise, attempted to create a sort of Terminator greatest hits, recreating scenes from the 1984 original before veering into a convoluted mess involving an evil John Connor made of nanoparticles or whatever. It was a bad time. Suddenly, the timeline became far more confusing because the studios were trying to appease international markets by stuffing the film with recognizable IP while disregarding the whole quality and originality aspect that buoyed the first two films. Finally, there came the return of the king. James Cameron, the man, the myth, the legend, returned to the franchise as a producer for 2019's Terminator Dark Fate. He insisted on ignoring everything after T2, which, while it was meant to clean up the timeline, Dark Fate immediately alienated fans by killing John Connor in the opening minutes, thereby retroactively rendering the events of the first two films pointless. It felt like the ultimate betrayal, and that was made all the worse by the fact that most of the audience let out a collective meh at the whole thing. As far as why things went tits up yet again, Cameron and director Tim Miller reportedly clashed over the film's tone and direction, leading to a messy final product that once again failed to engage fans. Enrage? Sure. Engage? Nah, son, this just wasn't it. A major factor in the messiness of the timeline is the shifting target audience. The first two films were both hard Rs that played out as horror and thriller, respectively, with the third film basically a retread of the thriller dynamic. Beginning with Salvation, studios began pushing for a PG-13 rating to maximize box office potential. As we've seen throughout recent cinematic history, this was a bad idea. Both Salvation and Genisys made an attempt at walking that fine line between being an adult action picture and a made-for-families thrill ride, and neither sufficiently recovered. They felt defanged. Dark Fate, as previously noted, did try to bring things back to their roots and present a more, well, dark interpretation of the material. Unfortunately, they might have leaned a bit too hard in that direction, fumbling audience goodwill in the process. Dark Fate was kind of just a Genisys without the PG-13 or terrible title hindering it. Instead, the problem was that it committed yet another, in this case very literal, character assassination, and attempted to fill in many of the blanks with fan service, like like the welcome but at times jarring choice to bring back Linda Hamilton. Basically, the timeline isn't broken because of science, fiction, or otherwise, but because Hollywood just plain refuses to let a story have an ending. When the goal is an unending franchise centered on time travel, the timeline kinda by necessity becomes a circle of nonsense. So I suppose the truth here is less about the overall timeline and like the logistics and shit, but that frankly, Terminator should have ended with T2. James Cameron already gave the franchise a perfect ending. Why screw that up? Well, money. The answer is money. Next time on The Truth About, join me as I delve into the MCU yet again. And this time, it's to the very origins of the MCU. Get them tags going. Yeah, really feast on that algorithm. Oh, you love that MCU content. Anyway, until then, I've been and continue to be Michael Keane. Thank you for watching ScreenRant.